Yeah, I think we need to first ask ourselves that in this democratic setup that we have, what were the traditional methods of accountability? Now, in a representative democracy, the traditional method was that the people's representatives were accountable to the people every 5 years when they came for elections, and the rest of the institutions were accountable to the representatives. So, that was how accountability was supposed to work. But unfortunately, it doesn't work, and there are at least 4 or 5 reasons why it doesn't work like that. On the one hand, it is because there is complicity or indifference of the elected representatives in some of the wrongdoing or with some of the wrongdoing that takes place. So, they are not really truly representative of the people. That is one problem. The second problem that tends to make this accountability issue break down is that our legal structures have become such in this country that, as you know, there is a whip system and there is an anti-defection law. So, in effect, individual representatives do not have the ability to take up issues which are not approved by their parties. And the third problem is that actually there is almost no inner party democracy. So, decisions for a party are not made by the members of that party, and therefore, in the ultimate analysis, the system does not work. Now, one might ask, well, then why do not we vote out that group and get somebody else at least once in 5 years? Again, there are 3 or 4 problems. The most important is that you do not have any alternatives. So, you might have 2 parties or 3 parties which are fighting. You know very well that if you even succeed in electing an individual who is not a part of a party, that is not going to help you. And all those 2 or 3 parties do not have much differences in terms of accountability. So, first of all, there is not much option. Secondly, it happens once in 5 years, which is a long time. Thirdly, there are too many issues and very complex issues. So, for example, if I am upset about the way forests are being cut down or animals are being treated, how do I make sure that that gets expressed through my vote? Because there are hundreds of issues, and even my representative does not know why he or she got voted in or voted out. So, it is all very problematic. That is why we have now started pushing for what we call participatory democracy, which is where the Right to Information Act comes in, that we are saying, look, we do not want to, by voting once in 5 years, give up our right to insist that the government is accountable to us on a daily basis. And so, we say that do not worry about our representatives, come and tell us directly what is happening. And this is where the right to information comes. There are 2 parts to the right to information. One part is where they are supposed to proactively or suo moto put across some information, and this is where we are saying to them, do not wait for us to ask, you come and tell us what have you done, what have you delivered. And the second part is where I can file an application, so that if they are not being adequately open, if they are not being adequately transparent, then I can ask, what have you done about this, what have you done about that. So, that is the beginnings of accountability in what we would say a participatory manner rather than a representative manner. And that is what makes it so important, because history has shown us that anywhere in the world, not just in India, a representative accountability does not work. There are many other reasons, but at least for this. Now, let us come to the second aspect of it. Obviously, this means that all institutions need to be accountable to the people. So, not just governments, but corporate sector, the media, etc. Everybody needs to be accountable in an appropriate manner. And that is why in India at least we have a law which is reasonably comprehensive, which actually even covers the corporate sector indirectly. I think the media is still trying to stay out of it, but sooner or later they are also going to get into it. But the important issue is that how does one institutionalize this accountability? You see, people talk about deepening democracy, and yes, one of the things that the RTI Act has done is to deepen democracy. But you also have to institutionalize democracy, because by giving information to everybody, or let me put it this way, if it is everybody's business, it is nobody's business. Now, we have seen these big scams like 2G and CWG and Adarsh and so on and so forth. Why is it that the RTI Act, which is so effective in sorting out, even preventing individual grievances, was not able to prevent these sorts of scams? I think there are 2 or 3 reasons. One of the reasons is this, that because, say for example, take the 2G scam, none of us were individually victims. We were all a collective victim, and therefore none of us felt the responsibility of doing something. If it is my ration card, then I am the victim, so I'll fight for it. If it's the road outside my house, then I'm concerned, I'll fight for it. But this is a universal issue. So how does one institutionalize democracy in a manner such that something which is everybody's problem also becomes some institution's problem? So that's the first demand for what one would call participatory accountability. The second reason why, for example, scams like 2G, etc., didn't get prevented through the RTI is because you need specialized knowledge to be able to anticipate these scams. Now, I for one didn't have any idea what spectrum was till this scam broke. I had some vague notion of, things, but nothing like that it's a tangible commodity which can be sold like this. So a lot of these scams are based on the fact that there is specialized knowledge which is available to very few. And therefore, we've got to make sure that the institutionalizing process of accountability is such that it contains the specialized knowledge, so that people can actually, in fact, what we are trying to do is now set up little groups where people can identify that, look, take the land or the real estate sector, or take the environmental sector or the telecom or any sector. Experts can tell you, look, these are the symptoms. So if you really want to know if things are going wrong, use the RTI Act to access this information. Insist that this information, in fact, is suo motu put out. Because if they start putting it out suo motu, then you can actually anticipate a scam and not wait till it breaks. Now, the last part of it is that, underlying all this is political accountability. How do you make a political class directly accountable when their arrogant claim is that they are elected by the people, and therefore they are not answerable to anybody except once in 5 years to the people? And as I already mentioned, if that is all that their accountability is, then it's not going to work. So what is happening now is that more and more people are using this populist stance against them. So what is happening is that whereas they might say that, look, my reckoning is 5 years down the line, but the media, movements, NGOs, etc., are working very hard to expose them, so that when they get exposed, they become liabilities to their party, and the chances of their getting a ticket becomes less and less, because there's nothing else you can do. There's a group in Delhi called Satark Nagrik Sangathan, which is working at political accountability. Now, they've been doing this for some time, and we find that the political party is more susceptible to the negative inputs against a sitting MLA or MP than the MLA or MP is himself or herself. They feel that, oh, when the time comes, I'll use my money power, my caste linkages, this and that to get re-elected. And in a vast country like India, it's very difficult to influence a large number of people through this information. But the parties start getting influenced, and we need to start working at that. So to my mind, the thrust of political accountability has to be on the political parties, and it must include a right to question them and to say, look, this is what has happened, what have you done about it? The right of political accountability must be to question political executives. We should be able, every time the Prime Minister makes or the government makes a wrong appointment, for example, we should be able to question the government, and the government must be obliged to say, look, why they did this. We've been arguing that it's not practical to say that government must take all the advice that people give to them, because all sorts of advice comes to the government. But an essential part of a consultative process is that suppose they ask the people, what do you think about this? Whether it be a project, whether it be appointment, whatever it is. and the people give their views. Suppose they are rejecting a view, they must publicly give reasons of why that view is being rejected. And why that's important is that if they give absurd reasons, people will laugh at them. And if they give wrong reasons, people will question them. People will take them to a court of law. You say that this is what happens, but this is not what happens. That is where ultimately accountability should take us. That everybody should know that the people of India have elected them or appointed them to take decisions on behalf of the people. But each of these decisions is going to be immediately questioned. And even as they are making the decision, they should be preparing their defense, the basis on which these decisions have been made. And if they want their defense to be viable, then they must have consulted the people in advance, and they must have responded to at least the non-trivial inputs that people would have given them. So broadly speaking, I think this is the framework within which political accountability must work.